Borno State hit again by suicide blasts. Nigerians experience extended days of blackout even during Eid al-Fitr celebrations. 3 dead, scores injured in Japan earthquake. And in sports, Mexico humble World Cup defending champions, Germany.
This is ANN News.
I am Rotimi Akinson. The cycle of violence that has rocked many northern Nigerian cities is not abated. More than 30 persons lost their lives in Dambuwa, Borno State over the weekend, where a suicide bomb exploded in Abachari village. Residents claim the numbers are higher. Almost 50 persons were injured. The attack came at a time the army had announced the return of 2,000 IDPs to their homes. Eyewitnesses say there were 2 suicide attacks and rocket-propelled grenade explosions. They also report that after the suicide bombings, rocket-propelled grenades were fired into the crowds that had gathered at the scene of the attacks that raised the casualty numbers. The Peace Corps of Nigeria is crying out to any government authority that would listen to appeal to the Inspector General of Police to unseal its corporate headquarters that had been locked up for more than a year now. The Peace Corps says there are at least 15 existing court orders against the police and other security agencies. They point out that none of the court orders had been appealed. The police has refused to vacate the properties despite 2 court orders and resolution of the House of Representatives, Attorney General's letter of authority, interventions from civil society organizations, and the National Human Rights Commission. Just last week, a federal high court judge has restrained the police and the Inspector General from further harassing or further prosecuting Dixon Ako, Peace Corps National Commandant. African Development Bank and Osun State government are partnering to help the state complete some major projects. The announcement was made during a visit to the state of the bank's representative in Nigeria, Ebrima Fao. He said the state has done well with an earlier facility provided by the bank.
To support, we will then find a way to see how we can work with them to do it. So at the moment we're at a dialogue stage, as we call it, and that dialogue will lead to actual projects later on there.
There are key strategic areas that have been identified for support, which include areas around technical and vocational education, which is very key for this government. We've also identified area of water supply, urban water supply. Currently, FDB supply is supporting the state with a rural water supply across the entire state. But we are also moving to the urban water supply.
We are hopeful, extremely optimistic that you will use us as a good model of subnational partnership that will lead to a huge scale of participation at that level outside the national.
President Muhammadu Buhari is set to sign the country's 9 trillion naira budget tomorrow, Tuesday. This move will avert a government shutdown. The president had been averse to a 500 billion naira increase tacked on by the National Assembly in November. Government lawyers had warned that if the president failed to sign the budget now, the implications could be a shutdown that would mean the government will be unable to pay for services. There has never been a government shutdown in the country. Rochas Okorocha, Imo State Governor and head of the All Progressives Congress Appeals Subcommittee, has announced that 19 aspirants have been disqualified as the party's convention draws near. Okorocha told newsmen over the weekend that there has been no petitions against aspirants for the offices of the National Chairman and National Secretary. He said the committee's final report will be submitted to the Convention Committee today, Monday. The next story is about an unusual controversy between two transportation associations. The Lagos State Union of Road Transport Workers is refusing to allow the State and Cab Operators Association to use the yellow color that is always associated with taxi operations in most of the world. The taxi sector says it has been using the color since 1979, while the State Taxi and Cab Operators Association says it bought the color from the state in 2007. Neither party has budged. Chairman of the taxi sector, Olatunji Odujobi, says the situation persists despite petitions to the state government. He calls on the Inspector General of Police to intervene. For some days now, Nigerians have been experiencing drawn-out blackout in many parts of the country. Even the Eid al-Fitr celebrations didn't receive mercy from the electricity sector. People groan. Foods went bad in refrigerators and heat rash had begun to visit some. Now the Transmission Company of Nigeria has explained the reasons for this inconvenience, saying there were shortages in gas supply. As a result, there was significant reduction in power generation and distribution. More than half a dozen generating plants were affected across the country. A TCN spokesman said a gas pipeline rupture was reported by the Nigeria Gas Company. At the same time, Shell Nigeria's gas wells became faulty, causing a drop of more than 1,000 megawatts in national grid generation. To keep this in perspective, South Africa, with a population of about 56 million, generates 34,000 megawatts of electricity. In contrast, Nigeria, with a population of between 180 and 200 million, 3 times South Africa's population, generates about 7,000 megawatts. Quite a disparity. Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano says he will not go back on the decision to ban commercial motorcycles known as Okada in Oka and Onitsha. From July the 1st, enforcement will begin. Okada operators are protesting against the ban, saying at least 15,000 of them will lose their jobs as a result of this decision. The governor said his government is making alternative plans to provide shuttle buses to cover as many routes as possible. He also said the government has designed a loan arrangement for the motorcycle operators to buy tricycles and shuttles and pay installmentally. Stay with us. ANN News continues after this break.
There is a new all-news network on the scene in Nigeria to give news from a purely news perspective and to promote free information flow across Africa. African News Network, ANN, fresh views, unbiased, bold, with a purely African view. Watch ANN News on MITV beginning Monday morning at 10. ANN, in a truly African spirit.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. A sit-at-home protest is expected to be observed in Togo this Monday after opposition parties in the country called on supporters to sustain their protest for political reforms. Mass anti-government rallies have repeatedly been held across the country in recent months, with protesters demanding constitutional reforms and an end to the 50-year rule by the Asingbe family. They also want 2 terms limits for presidents. Somalia and Ethiopia have announced their joint venture in 4 seaports to attract investments to their 2 countries. In a joint statement in Mogadishu, the 2 leaders, Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed of Somalia and Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed, pledged to develop their country's infrastructure and expand visa services between the 2 countries. Analysts say this is the latest move in a tussle for access to ports along one of the world's most strategic waterways. An Angolan prosecutor has asked for the conviction of a journalist and right activist, Rafael Marques, for accusing a former Attorney General of corruption in a real estate deal. Pedro Pedamera says Marques had insulted public authority in a 2016 article in which he alleged that João Maria de Souza was involved in a shady land purchase. 8 Kenyan police officials were killed in the eastern part of the country on Sunday after their vehicle hit an improvised explosive device planted by Somalia's Al-Shabaab militant group. A Kenya police spokesman said 5 administration police and 3 reservists were killed while protecting borders and security of the county. Earlier this month, 5 Kenyan police officers were killed in a similar attack in the same region. The militants frequently launch attacks in neighboring Kenya to pressure it to withdraw its troops, which from part of the AU peacekeeping force. Egypt has announced on Saturday steep increases in fuel and cooking gas prices as part of the country's economic reforms and austerity measures designed to overhaul the country's ailing economy. The new prices went into effect on Saturday morning. Prices for cooking gas increased from about $3.50 to $5.50 per cylinder. More than 60% increase. This is the 3rd time the government has increased fuel prices since austerity measures were announced 2.5 years ago. The move is likely to send price soaring further. The tough austerity measures have come as a heavy blow to poor and middle-class Egyptians. Ivory Coast Democratic Party, a member of the ruling coalition, has rejected a proposal to form a unified party ahead of the 2020 presidential elections. Analysts say this is a plan which was supported by President Alassane Ouattara. In a final statement, after hours of debate, the party reassured members of its determination to regain power in the country's next presidential polls. The PDCI meeting comes 2 weeks after Ouattara suggested he could seek a 3rd term after 2020. Zimbabwe's war veterans leader, Victor Mate Madanda, has reportedly claimed that the opposition MDC alliance presidential candidate Nelson Chamisa political moves are turning him into a smaller version of former President Robert Mugabe. Mate Madanda was reported to have blasted Chamisa, saying he was becoming a younger version of Mugabe, as he was trying to bribe the 1970s freedom fighters in exchange for political support. Last month, Chamisa promised to take care of the former liberation fighters, saying he would give them a decent lump sum pension if elected. Congolese opposition leader Moise Katumbi's office says authorities have cancelled his passport just days after the exiled politician gathered thousands for an opposition rally using a video link to address his supporters in the capital, Kinshasa. Katumbi is a millionaire businessman. He was also former governor of Congo's copper-producing Katanga province, is seen as the leading opponent in delayed elections scheduled for December, 2 years after President Joseph Kabila's constitutional mandate ran out. Kabila's critics say he has deliberately delayed polls beyond his allotted 2-term limit to extend his power and has sidelined popular opposition figures in an attempt to quell dissent. Kabila denies any wrongdoing. Katumbi noticed his passport had been cancelled on Wednesday while going through customs in Belgium in transit from Israel and on his way to the opening ceremony of the Football World Cup in Russia. We'll be back after these messages. Stay with us.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay? Lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on, so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
One of the most powerful earthquakes to rock Japan in decades struck Osaka and neighboring areas on Monday morning, leaving at least 4 persons dead and more than 300 injured. The magnitude 6.1 quake hit early in the morning. No tsunami warning was issued. There is a morality story brewing in the U.S. today in the immigration sector. In a bid to prevent illegal immigration, the Trump administration is now reported to be separating children from their parents at camps where they also have detention centers. The galling part of the story is that now hundreds of lone children are kept in cages, yes, cages, in U.S. Border Patrol centers. This is said to be in concert with President Donald Trump's zero-tolerance policy for illegal immigrants. The Border Patrol says there are approximately 200 minors inside the facility at the South Texas border. Journalists who have visited the facility report no toys or books for the children. Some of the images shown inside the facility also show the children wrapped in foil blankets, the type usually seen after a natural disaster. The Taliban has resumed fighting in Afghanistan as ceasefire to observe Eid al-Fitr ends. President Ashraf Ghani had announced the government was extending its own truce with the group by 10 days, but the Taliban says no, repeating its preconditions for peace talks. They say they would only negotiate directly with the U.S. and they want foreign troops to leave Afghanistan. Hundreds of soldiers and police officers have been killed since the Taliban launched their spring offensive in April in a bid to control large swath of the country. Greek protesters have clashed with riot pleas as the foreign ministers of Greece and Macedonia signed a preliminary accord to rename the country the Republic of North Macedonia since 1991. Athens has objected to its neighbor being called Macedonia because it has its own northern province that bears the same name. Authorities say about 5,000 people took part in the protests. Stay with us, we will return after this break.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay? Lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to sports. The defending world champions are bound to Mexico in their first World Cup match in Russia on Sunday. Having Lozano's first half strikes saw Mexico stun the defending champions in the opening match of Group F. Germany laid siege to a tiring Mexico's penalty area but could not find a way past Guillermo Ochoa. Mexico had not gone past the round of 16 in the last 6 consecutive World Cup campaigns.
Brilliantly stuck by Toni Kroos. Plenty of white shirts. He can hit them. It's a good hit.
Meanwhile, Serbia got their World Cup campaign off to a great start by defeating Costa Rica 1-0. Alexandra Kolarov produced a moment of super inspiration, hitting home a superb free kick. Serbia is up and running now in its Group E campaign. The victory over Costa Rica gives a vital 3-point award to Serbia, whose coach feels great relief. Not the same could be said of the Costa Rican coach Oscar Ramirez, whose side are in a very uncertain situation.
Here's Mitrovic. And Tadic. Oh, wonderful opportunity. Completely wasted there.
Finally tonight, and still on World Cup news, seismic monitoring agency SEMSA is reporting Mexico football fans may have caused a minor earthquake as they celebrated their team's shock win over Germany at the World Cup. Tremors were recorded in Mexico City after having Lozano fire the winning goal past German goalkeeper Manuel Neuer. The Mexican engineering and mining firm says the earthquake that hit Mexico City was artificial that could have been caused by massive jumps when their team scored. Everybody must have jumped at the same time there. Well, that wraps it up for us on ANN News this evening. Thanks for watching. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net, and our social media platforms, ANN Africa TV. I am Rotimi Akintunde. Have a great evening.
The god of this era is in front of you.
Save your daughter who's to be born. Go.
No! The world of dreams is waiting for you.
Why do you want to decide my destiny?
A story written in an illusionary world.